people comment on my calling, as they like to call it, that I guess when you get into ministry, you are called by God, and when you get in anything else, you're not. I had a truck driver that pointed that out one time. He had read one of my books and called me from someplace, and he said, "I really appreciate that you've responded to your calling." And I said, "You have responded to your calling as well." I don't drive a truck. You do, and I'm glad you do, because I love to get things via UPS and however else things come across this nation in trucks. But the idea is that there's one kind of calling that's higher than another. And I don't think that's true. We're not here to spread the word of God. You know, that's something we've all heard, that the ministry is all about spreading the word of God. The word of God is already spread. There are a lot of people that don't see it. And it does take people like myself to present a message for people who are ready for the kind of message that I talk about. There are many more that are still in the more traditional approach to life. There are many that are not doing any of that, but they're still responding to what they feel is their best place in life to do, to come to this earth to do something, and they're doing what they do best, and that's an important thing to do. Beth and I were up on the Uncompahgre Plateau at a cabin over the weekend, Alta Wadlow's cabin, as many of you know, have been up there. But it's a primitive cabin, complete with an outhouse and no running water, no electricity, but it's a good shelter. And so, and there's no cell phone reception, so that's kind of nice. But it's an experience where you can sit in nature and just look at it and experience it as it is. And I was thinking about this as I was sitting on the front porch looking at the spectacular field of wildflowers and grass and just all of the, it's at 8,000 feet, so we were kind of above the smoke. It wasn't too bad up there. But you have the natural experience that's always there, that peace that you experience in nature that's unhindered by humans. And up there, it's, the human footprint is there. You had to have a lane to get back to the cabin, and you had to have the cabin, of course. So there's some interruptions to the natural scenery. But there's plenty of natural scenery where you can just experience that directly. But then you come down to the city, and everywhere there's the human influence. And we get caught up in that human influence, and we forget that natural setting is still there. And when we come down into the human influence, we start defining things differently. When you are in the natural setting, it's a pretty universal type of thing. And I realize that not all people experience the natural world in the same way. People that are raised in the city nature may frighten them. They feel like, I've got no cell phone, I don't have a life, I don't have a connection to everything else. Something's missing, something important, something vital, something that I have to have. And so our human self has fallen into a world that we basically have created. And we're trying to live in that world with the same kind of peace that comes very natural in a natural setting. We're trying to regain something we feel we've lost. And so we actually have to make an effort to, in our human experience, in our human life that we have created, to remember something that comes very natural to us. And I think that's one of the biggest drawbacks in this whole spiritual thing, is we treat it as if it's something unnatural. And by that, I mean we have to learn to meditate. And that's not natural. to have to learn to meditate. Meditation, the state of mind that we describe as meditation, is natural. That's our natural state. We are all designed to live in communion with our Creator all the time. That life force that's welling up within us, it's not unnatural. We live in an unnatural environment that we've created. And we're not going to say that's a bad thing. It's just that we forget what is natural. What we call normal, usually we mean is natural. Everybody's doing it. It's natural. But because everybody's doing it means it's normal. Maybe as far from natural as you can get. You follow the herd, you follow the crowd, you follow, the group. If your spiritual understanding is really the list of bestsellers that have come out over the last 10 years, then you probably don't have much of an understanding of your own. You have somebody else's. And it's probably a good thing to have. But what we're talking about is getting in touch with the natural flow of spirit into our being. We don't make it happen. We observe it. And that is a natural state. Our natural state is to know that we're connected to something larger than ourselves. But we come down here in the human level, the human experience, where we have all these possessions and we have things that define us, that accentuate our personality and personal interests and all of that. And we become separate from other people, other things. And life is something that happens to us out here someplace. And the spiritual quest has become unnatural. And I don't care that you look out and see, there's a $1 billion market for spiritual things now. The word meditation used to be used very sparingly, and now it's used all the time, so much so that I don't think we even know what it means. It just means to relax, let go, and let the body be free of stress for a time. And it's unfortunate that we do that, but meditation, it's a mindset. It's a natural mindset. It's a knowing. Our connection to our, whatever it is that's pushing out to be us. When you look at the lilies of the field, as Beth and I were doing, the birds of the air, the swallows that were flying around, they don't have the problems we have, because they don't have the imagination to invent them. We're gifted with that. We have this incredible imagination that allows us to create a world that doesn't naturally exist. As Thomas Trord pointed out, you take a piece of iron, you drop it in water, it sinks. But the human being has this ability to take that same iron and form the hull of a ship, so that iron actually floats. We have an incredible ability, this thing we call imagination. But with it, we invent all kinds of problems. We invent a reality where we can exist apart from our source. And because we do that, then we try to compensate for that with all the things that we go out and drag into our lives, so we'll feel whole. So this call that I'm talking about today has nothing to do with a calling or a profession or any particular way that we choose to experience life. It has to do with something we're all familiar with. And everyone in this room has come from a set of teachings, a set of ideas that you were given as truth. Maybe you weren't all raised in a traditional Christian church or a traditional church of some kind, traditional Jewish or whatever tradition. Maybe you weren't inundated with ideas where you were said that you were told this is how it is, this is true. I was raised in that, and I think most of us were in some way. where God is up in the sky and Jesus came to save us from our sins and all of the things that we have to do to, keep ourselves on the straight and narrow to get back to that presence of God. All of that is unnatural. It is a system that is taught from the spiritually sleeping. The traditional religion, and I'll say all traditional religions, come out of the human imagination, not from the spiritual experience. All religions start with someone who remembers who they are. They have that direct experience with God, and they realize that they are a direct expression of that living process. Jesus called it the Father because it was so personal to him. I like that term. I don't use it often. But it's a personal, my source, my protector, my being. It's natural. But so much of religion is looking out there up in the sky for our salvation, for our hope. We're looking to the future for the second coming, or case of the Jews, the first coming. Somebody's got to come and fix us because we are living an unnatural life. So we're exposed to that kind of thing, and what is it in your life that has said, that's not enough, that's not good enough? Because we want to make this personal. What is it that has told you, I've heard all of that, and maybe I believed it for a time, but I no longer accept it? I've shared the story with you many times that coming up from the Baptist church, I picked up Emilie Cady's book, Lessons in Truth, and it showed me something different. My soul actually responded to this, to the message that was there. So I knew it was right. I knew it was true, and I gave the book to my Baptist minister, the minister, and he said it was the work of the devil, and I knew, something in me knew it wasn't the work of the devil. So an authority higher than the one I was raised with spoke, and I listened. That's the call I'm talking about. It's that something that says what you are exposed to here isn't the full story. There's something deeper, something more. And it's not your head that responds to it, although it may be. Because I remember thinking way back when some things just didn't seem spiritually logical. How could we say God is love and then worry about being destroyed, being sent to hell for eternity? That's kind of a hard thing to logically put together. So I can understand, to go beyond that, maybe that's not true. Maybe there is no such thing as hell. Maybe there is no eternal punishment for the wayward soul. Maybe that's not true at all. Maybe there's another way to look at it. So what is the authority? Yes, we have books, we have people that tell us this, that remind us that there's something else. But we have to respond to that. I gave that book to a number of people throughout my life, and some of them had no response to it at all. And it made me realize that you've got to be in a certain place, a certain state of readiness, I guess. Your soul is right there at the surface, ready to break through. So I understand that we're at different places in that regard. Some people are perfectly happy being told that you walk the straight and narrow, you're going to hell. That's the thing that'll keep them on the straight and narrow. Although that's not always where they stay. It's like somebody brought up on Facebook the other day that the liquor store that has the front door, then the back door for the Baptists, or whatever, I don't know. But there's a contradiction in some of the perspective. Is like, I don't want any church people to see me sin, but I'll sin, just as long as nobody sees me from church, kind of thing. It's like, if God is omnipresent, then that's not going to matter much. If sin is actually something you're going to be punished for, then you'll be punished. You're not going to escape it. But I would rather think from the perspective that if I totally screw it up, I'll be okay. That's forgiveness. That's love. So I've come to that place. I can go down the wrong path all my life and still be okay. That's quite a load to lift off your shoulders when you're thinking about the Almighty, sitting there poised to take you out forever. When you get rid of that, but how can you get rid of it if you keep listening to people? If you keep listening to all the religious authorities out there? So this call is something that brings us into another place. It brings us into a place of where we resonate with what is naturally rising in us. It has nothing to do with any profession. Emilie Cady said, "Sometime, somewhere, every human being must come to himself. Having tired of eating husks, he will arise and go to my Father." She, of course, is referring to the prodigal son who was so desperate in the far country after he took his father's inheritance and squandered it all and lived out in the far country and was actually eating the food that he was feeding the hogs. He was so hungry. He was in bad shape. And again, I think Jesus, he's just saying, here's the very worst thing you can possibly imagine happening. And this kid turns around and goes home. Totally accepted. I've said often, I think the story of the prodigal son is the original Christian message. That's the God I want. I want that Father. Let me mess it up. I'll mess it up really good. I'll get all of it out of my system, but I'll still be okay. That's the kind of God I want. And I think that's what he was saying. Why would he say all that? Why would he give that example? It wouldn't make sense if he said, the kid goes home and he gets the heck beat out of him, gets punished, gates are locked, he can't get in. That would be his brother. His brother would have done all that. His brother, who stayed home and followed all the rules, was angry that this kid could go off and do all these things, and still the father loved him and accepted him back. That brother is the traditional religious thinking. It's the judgmental condemnation, the one that defines sin and sinner, worthy and the unworthy. It's not God. That's a human creation. So we come to that point where I have come to that point where I can talk about these things without any fear of getting hit by lightning. If I get hit by lightning, it won't be because I've said this. And I've almost been hit by lightning. We had to blow a hole through the side of our house one day. It actually got closer to Beth than me, if you can imagine that. So I don't think there was any punishment involved in it. It just happened. We had a great big ponderosa pine growing through our deck. And the lightning hit that pine and jumped over from that to the house and blew a basketball-sized hole right through the side of the house, went through the living room where Beth was just taking a nap, and blew out all of our electrical equipment in the house. But I don't think that was any punishment for anything that we had done. Beth doesn't sin. She's the most perfect person on the planet. I'm the sinner of the two, But see, I don't wrestle with that stuff. It's like, well, maybe I will get hit by lightning. I actually know some people who have been hit by lightning, and they're good people. Good things happen. Bad things happen to good people. You hear somebody say this, somebody struggling with something. Well, he's such a good person. As if he's being punished. That's our old thinking. But I don't wrestle with that stuff anymore. And New Thought has gone even a step further and said, well, it's your thinking that's caused it. You're being punished for your thinking. Well, why is that any better? What's different about that and an old man in the sky that's got a bad attitude? My thinking did it to me. Yeah, we know that we can put ourselves in some pretty miserable places with our thinking. Or am I the only one that has ever done that? Some of you have done that on occasion, I'm sure. And that's no fun. But what I have come to in myself is I can mess myself up thinking-wise. I can go as far as I can imagine, and I have. The more you learn about positive thinking, the more negative you get. Because you get afraid. Oh, I had a negative thought. That's why I had a blowout. You can start relating all the things that would happen normally in your life to something you did to bring it on. What's different about that and carrying a punishing God around? There's no difference. You're still being punished. What difference does it make by whom? You're living a life based on fear. Why do we want to think positive? You can't make yourself think positive. Positive thinking is an effect. It's an effect of the peace that you naturally have access to. When you touch that place of peace in yourself, your thinking follows. That's the value of taking time to be still. If you're in a quandary about something, your mind is just shooting every place, and you can manage to sit yourself down for long enough to let go, your thinking starts changing. It starts following your experience, your natural experience. It's like dropping yourself in the middle of that field we were looking at. And all of the distractions, all of the things that are attacking are suddenly lifted, suddenly gone. And we find that peace that passes all understanding. What's that mean? Passes all understanding. It makes no sense that the peace is there because I'm thinking of all these negative things. But the peace is still there. It's just me that's hanging on to a mental state. So I agree to not resolve all my problems before I seek to be still. I simply agree to let go. And my thinking will follow the experience that I have. It's pretty amazing. And it's pretty simple, and it's very logical. That where is the lack of peace? Where does that exist? It's not in nature. Even a thunderstorm is not a lack of peace. I love thunderstorms. I love to sit out in them. I used to film lightning on just a home camera, and then you can stop the frames and see the lightning in its different phases, which you don't see with your normal vision. It's really incredible. I understand that's a dangerous thing to do, but it was worth the risk just to have that experience. That stuff goes on around us, we don't even know it. We don't know what's happening. The peace that we are after is always with us, and it's a call. And we interpret that call as, well, I need to get into this profession so I can resolve all these issues, or I need to do this or that so I can resolve all these things and become peaceful. That's the normal approach. It's not natural. Natural approach is to let go, is to spend time letting go, is to acknowledge that the craziness that I'm experiencing in life is of my own making. It's my mind going crazy. But what's God doing all that time? Is God sitting up in the sky watching my mind go crazy, thinking, well, no hope for this guy? God is offering the peace that passes all understanding. It's never taken away. It's never absent. It's always there. Cady is stating an encouraging truth here. The life many of us are living is likely but a fraction of the life that is trying to express itself through us. And I don't like this idea, or I've come to not like it so well, that we're only living out of 10% of our potential or something like that. I don't like to think that way. What percentage of an eternal being? I mean, how can you chop up an eternal being into percentages? We're either aware of God as our source or not. We're living out of a fraction of our being. It's the tip of the iceberg thing. Remember the illustration I gave years ago that 10% of the iceberg sticks up out of the water. 90% is underneath. That's the soul. That's us. Most of what we are is unseen. But we're living out of all the needs of that 10%. We're all frantic about not being able to meet those needs. The iceberg itself actually has no needs. It's complete, and it's floating in this environment. Most of it is in an unseen realm that coexists with that which is seen. We live not in a dual universe, but in a multi-level universe. There's a lot going on. You are a spiritual being expressing through a physical body. That's not two things, it's one thing expressing on different levels. But where's most of our attention? It's on the 10%. It's on that tip of the iceberg. And we say, where is peace? Well, this whole big bulk of the iceberg is at peace, floating around, doing its thing. But when I say we're living out of a percentage or a small part of ourselves, a fraction of ourselves, it's that awareness that when you're frantic, know it's the 10%. And it helps to know that. And know that you can't mess it up. Even if you're totally involved in the 10%, you're a 10%er. And that's your whole world. You're not going to mess it up. Allow yourself that kind of freedom. Take that punishing God away. Get rid of it. Because it doesn't work, doesn't help, doesn't do anything good. We sense the call to arise, to come up higher. And we translate this call into a vision of better, more free and external conditions. We want to fix the 10% realm. The conditions we envision, however, may not be the true reflections of what God has in store for us. We're responding to the inner call, but we may not be fully surrendering to it. So we think we have the solution, something that needs to be done to bring peace into our lives. The first step is to let that go. Maybe that's the answer, maybe not. But peace itself is unconditional. It doesn't depend on us manifesting something. It doesn't depend on something happening in our lives that's not happening right now. It depends on our ability to just tune in to that peace. Again, if you look at the flowers in the field and the birds that fly, they are totally in the now moment. They're responding to their environment. They're living. You watch a barn swallow fly, and you think what it takes for that thing to land on a fence post as lightly and as easily as it does. Where did it get that? How did it learn that? For us to invent something that would do that very thing, like a drone, and even a drone won't do it like a bird does it. They have this ability. They're flowing with their creator in the now moment. Their creator's creating them. They're letting all of this happen this moment. We're sitting here thinking about what happened yesterday. You can just tell by watching birds and looking at flowers that they're not thinking about what might happen in the future. They're not worried about what happened yesterday. You just sense that's what's going on. They're fully there in the now moment. So we have this wonderful ability, this wonderful imagination that we're robbing ourselves with. We're pointing the gun to our own head and pulling the trigger. We're taking away our own peace by imagining all these other things. And it's so easy to do, so easy to let the mind just go and run. But that call it's here. It's not something that has to happen. It's something that's happening now. And we are all responding to it. You could not turn back in your life right now, in your spiritual thinking, if you tried. Something won't let you do that. And what is that something? It's somebody that you really trust, say, don't ever change your thinking again. Don't get off this path. Nobody's told you that. You're here because you know it's right. You're responding to something nobody's saying, but that is coming through you. It's your call. You're already responding to it. That's a very important thing, I think. Give yourself that credit. As I said a couple of weeks ago, you look at all the books you've highlighted stuff in. Those highlights are the gospel according to you. Somebody else wrote it, but you respond to it. You highlight it because you know it's true. Why do you know it's true? How do you know it's true? What in you knows that it's true? That's the voice of God. That's the voice you're responding to. That's the call. That's very real. It will never leave you. Never has left you. Acknowledging that you're being called by God is the first most important step toward the life you seek. Many do not realize that their desire for a freer life is really the expansive nature of God seeking to outpicture through them. I think this line toward the life you seek, it's important to realize that the life you seek is not a thing that you're going to reach someday. It's a state of mind, a state of being. The life you seek is one where you are peaceful, doing whatever you're doing. It's not reaching a point where you're never harassed again. That point will never come. The life you seek is one where you're not responding like the world is falling apart every time something happens that you don't understand. That's what we're seeking. So when you think of it that way, that's not something far off. That's choice. That's perception. That's here now. By holding the thought that our desire for freedom is a product of personal ambition rather than a divine movement, we restrict the universal flow of greater good to a personal vision that will not exceed our census-based understanding. That's a whole lot of words that say a simple thing, that you don't desire freedom because it's a personal desire. It's universal. Everyone in this room desires freedom, greater freedom. All the little spiders and bugs and stuff that are in this room desire the same thing. There shouldn't be too many, but the ones that are here, it's not something we make up. My desire for the life I envision, a life of freedom I envision, is not my desire. It's not a personal thing I've made up. I'm responding to something that's given to me. This is the call. Very important. Spend quality time laying aside all the personal imagery of what you think your life can be or should become, and meditate on the inner call to arise. So you're already responding, and acknowledge this. Let your quiet time be, I'm here because I'm responding to the call. And I'm listening. I'm still listening.